Recognize that sound? Yes, it's the wind whipping through the trees. Some find it magical. For me, it's just another way to trigger my blepharitis and start the tears rolling down my red, swollen eyes. Now, thank you for joining us on The Ageless Traveler, dedicated to making lifelong travel easy so you never stop traveling. I'm your host, Adriane Berg, excited to finally hear from a top ophthalmologist that can solve the problem of traveler's eye and other eye issues. If you've ever suffered on a trip or gotten a sty, a swollen eye, or you're realizing you're not seeing as well as you did, Dr. Christopher Starr has solutions, especially for my problem, blepharitis. Sit back and relax. All the resources we discuss are on our show notes and also at agelesstraveler.com. And while you're on the site, join our Facebook salon and receive our exclusive fun goodies. We're going to be speaking right now to Dr. Christopher Starr. We're going to be talking about your eyes. It is such an important part of travel health because one of the things that can hurt your eyes, these long vacations where you do not see your eye doctor. Another place this can happen is if you're a snowbird, and you're away for 6 months, and your eye doctor is elsewhere. So many things you can do with regard to the sun and the rain and the change of climate that will annoy you throughout your trip, and we got to take care of that. So Dr. Christopher Starr is Associate Professor of Ophthalmology at Weill Cornell Medical Center, but he has a resume as long as your arm. It reads like War and Peace. He is a diplomat of the American Board of Ophthalmology, a fellow of the American College of Surgeons, a member of the American Academy of Ophthalmology, goes on and on. He's been picked as America's top doctors more than once. I mean, we're so thrilled to have you here, Dr. Starr. Thank you so much for being with us.
Wow. Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. Blessing.
I know. I asked you, what do you want to say? And you had like one little thing. And I'm sitting here with a ream of paper with all the great things about you. I couldn't resist. All right.
Well, thank you.
Let's get into this thing. I have been diagnosed with something called blepharitis. And this is not a joke. I used to be on TV, and for many times it was difficult. I would be crying on TV. You don't do that on a tax show. But it's a tough little nut to crack. Tell everybody what blepharitis is.
Yeah, well, blepharitis, for such a simple word, is a humongous topic. And blepharitis, basically, the word itself is just Latin for inflammation of the eyelids. But there are many things that can actually cause blepharitis. And blepharitis is what I would call one subtype, the greater ocular surface diseases or disorders that sort of run the gamut from dry eyes to blepharitis to styes and chalasia to ocular surface issues like pinguecula and pterygium, conjunctival floppy eyelids. The list goes on and on and on and on, and we would need an hour to discuss each one of those things. But blepharitis and meibomian gland dysfunction are probably the two biggest diagnoses under that umbrella, and one of the things that we see, ophthalmologists and eye care providers, probably more than anything else.
Well, this is a serious topic for the eyes, but right now, there's no doubt about that in my mind, particularly because if you do have an eye condition, it's one of those places where you could run out of drops, you could have some issues, and you have no one to talk to. So, you go to a hospital, and I just did in Da Nang, but you can't go to an eye doctor in Da Nang. Doesn't work that way. Okay. So let's go though. You gave us a big laundry list. I asked what blepharitis was. You gave me a big long list. If you go to a regular drugstore, you'll see little drops and they'll say, this is for dry eye. But you never see anything this is for blepharitis. Is this just a fancy word for it, or is there a completely distinct conditions? Tell us the difference between blepharitis and dry eye.
Yeah, these are great questions, and the distinctions there are very real distinctions, but they're also all very much intimately related to each other. All of the kind of what I would call ocular surface conditions, dry eye, blepharitis, meibomian gland dysfunction, and the list goes on and on, are all sort of different and unique diagnoses, but are all kind of intimately related to each other, often coexist in the same person, and can lead to a constellation of symptoms, some of which are common to each of these conditions and some are unique. Dry eye disease is one of the most common, if not the most common, diagnosis that eye care providers, ophthalmologists, optometrists make on a day-to-day basis, because almost everybody who walks in the door has some complaint about their eyes, especially in our age of computers where we're all staring into these devices all day long, 10 to 14 hours a day and not blinking as much. And that all takes a toll on the ocular surface and can lead to tear issues and ocular surface issues and the common symptoms that are kind of common to all of these ocular surface diseases, which are grittiness, redness, irritation, itching, fluctuating vision is a big one, and a whole bunch of other symptomatology that we see. And in the old days, anybody who came in with those symptoms might be just diagnosed with, oh, you have dry eye, go take some artificial tears and, come back next year. And the more we learn about these different conditions and the subtle differences between them all, well, then now we have the diagnostic armamentarium and knowledge to kind of individually address each one in different ways. And so blepharitis, which, as I said earlier, is just an inflammation of the eyelids, is often caused by Demodex mites, these little ectoparasitic mites. And I know it sounds horrific if you haven't heard this term before, and I can tell you as a doctor, it's often uncomfortable to even bring it up in an eye exam. But these little mites are present in about 69% of patients with blepharitis, and in almost 60% of all patients who walk in the door, with or without blepharitis diagnosis. So they're extremely common and the most common cause of blepharitis.
I have it, and I will explain this from the point of view of travel very seriously. So I have had to go to Weill Eye Institute because it was that bad, and even had my tear ducts moved. It was that bad. But when I travel, I have to bring with me hot pads so that I could take care of what I think are the mites that you're talking about. And this is what I was told to do. I was told to use very, very hot compresses when there's a flare-up. Is that something that you would agree with? And now we're going to leave you with a cliffhanger with regard to Dr. Starr's answer to that question about heat and heat pads and compresses. We have a culture vulturing moment and a treat for the ears as we listen to the Jazz Cartel. The Jazz Cartel was part of Modernism Week, and we have a short one in October and a very long one in Palm Springs in February. So just enjoy this swing moment with Willy Wonka, and the Chocolate Factory. You want to be paradise, exactly what I want, and you will. Anything you want to do, want to change you, there's nothing to do. And now we're back to find out more about the efficacy of heat on blepharitis.
So yes, for classic blepharitis, and with blepharitis, there are two kinds of common subtypes of actual blepharitis, this eyelid inflammation. There's anterior and there's posterior. Anterior is what we commonly think of when we think of these Demodex mites. There's a lot of crust. There's a lot of waxy buildup at the base of the eyelashes. We call these collarettes, which actually represent waste from the mites and eggs and various nasty things. And then there's posterior blepharitis, which is more of what we commonly refer to as meibomian gland dysfunction, or MGD, which is probably the number one cause of dry eyes. It causes an evaporation. The meibomian glands produce oils and lipids, and those lipids are really important for stabilizing our tears on the ocular surface. They help to prevent the tears from evaporating too quickly in between each blink. If your tears evaporate in between each blink, well, then you're going to have very significant dry eye symptoms because the tears are disappearing before you can blink again and replenish normal tears across the ocular surface. So you'll get these dry spots. It'll affect your vision. And one of the most common places where this has exacerbated is, again, on computers, because when you stare at computers, the blink rate decreases by 50%. When you're not looking at a computer, the blink rate is 50% more than when you're staring at a computer. And so if you have meibomian gland dysfunction and you don't have enough oil in your tears and you're staring at a computer and not blinking, your tears are going to evaporate and you're going to have all kinds of ocular surface dry eye strain symptoms as the day progresses. And so that's the posterior blepharitis, and that's the link to dry eyes. And so we do usually recommend a sort of daily maintenance for people with these forms of dry eye, mostly the meibomian gland dysfunction. And that's the heat, these hot pads that you were describing, and warming the eyelids, and that helps to sort of soften those oils that are sort of stuck inside those meibomian glands. It softens those secretions so that they can flow out of the eyelid more easily and get onto the ocular surface, where they will then stabilize the tears and reduce the evaporation rate and sort of help with dry eyes. Other things, some people will recommend cleaning the eyelids with little wipes, over-the-counter wipes.
Pads, right.
Yeah, the little pads, right? The heating.
They cost the earth, by the way. They're very expensive, and they're not covered.
Correct. Yes. A lot of that stuff that you see at the over-the-counter on that shelf, the eye shelf in the pharmacy, that's all pretty much out of pocket. And, it adds up, especially in people with severe conditions where they need to use the heat multiple times a day. They need to use the wipes multiple times a day. And then, of course, the artificial tears, which are the sort of mainstay of sort of putting up air quotes right now, which you can't see. But the sort of quote unquote over-the-counter dry eye relief is often, try dry artificial tears first. But those aren't cheap either. And if people with severe dry eyes, you have to put a lot of those drops in on a day-to-day basis. And that adds up too, so it's certainly not cheap, but and it can certainly help though with symptoms and sort of maintaining some of this stuff. Yeah.
So one of the things you should all know is that resources are always on the show notes. In addition to knowing how to access Dr. Christopher's work, and we'll talk about some of his videos, and he's really very, very accessible with his wonderful information. Let's take a short break and have a culture vulturing moment. That's a delight for the ears with the Latsos. If you have never heard of the Latsos, Latsos, they are a couple and they play the four-hand piano. So let's go ahead and do some Hungarian dances with Brahms. And now we're back, and of course we are speaking with Dr. Starr about traveler's eye. And one of the places that we feel it the most likely is on airplanes.
And so, I think traveling and that moving around the world is significant for the eyes and the ocular surface in particular for a number of reasons. One, usually when we travel, we get on airplanes. And I see a lot of patients with dry eyes and blepharitis, and those eyes tend to be a lot more sensitive to changes in environment. And airplanes, I always say, maybe one of the worst environments because the humidity is low, the recirculated air, and probably the worst thing, those little vents that blow always are directed right into our eyeballs. And all of that leads to, worsening exacerbations of pre-existing ocular surface and dry eye disease, and can create what we call flares, where you get off the plane or you end up in your vacation and your eyes are just killing you because of the airplane. And then, of course, wherever you're intimately tied into this ocular surface story are things like allergies, pollution, and environmental inciting triggers that can then also cause these flares of ocular surface disease. And I see patients who are allergic to things in Florida that they're not allergic to in New York, and vice versa. And I often get frantic calls, when patients are on vacation about these exacerbated, flared up, red, itchy, irritated, dry, gritty eyes. And, what can I do to help them remotely? So I think this vacation issue is a big one, and I'm glad that we're talking about it.
Yeah, between now and the next 20 years, older adults will take 1.6 billion trips. I mean, this is a phenomenon. So, and you want to look good too. I get a lot of styes. My eyes flare up, and it's the party on the cruise. You don't want to. There's a vanity issue to eyes as well. So let's talk about this. You have been named one of the top doctors in America when it comes to this. How does one select an eye doctor? It's understandable that if you have a terrible issue, as my mom had, we'll talk about macular degeneration, you go right to your eye doctor. But I think perhaps not enough people have an eye doctor. Who should have it, and how should they select?
Wow, that's a really good question. Well, I think the first issue here is if you don't have an eye doctor, it almost doesn't matter who it is, but you should certainly see an eye doctor. We all should, especially as we get older. And of course, the Academy of Ophthalmology recommends for people over the age of 50 to see an eye doctor annually. One of the things that I've always stayed with me for many, many years, there was a survey that was done probably 10 to 15 years ago. And it was a worldwide survey, and it sort of questioned just average people, about their sort of senses and what they thought was their most important sense. And by far, everybody said vision, 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 vision. They would lose every other sense before vision. Most of these people also said, and these were multiple choice questions, that they would rather lose a limb than lose their vision. They said that they would rather lose 10 years of their life than to go blind or to lose vision. But the irony of all of this is that those same people were more likely to see their primary care doctor every year, with or without new symptoms, just as a sort of annual visit, than they were to see their ophthalmologist or optometrist, their eye care provider. So there is this kind of disconnect, I think, in the world of, well, I need to see my eye doctor or my primary care doctor. I got to make sure I don't have hypertension or diabetes. And that's all important, obviously. But at the same time, when there's no acute eye symptom, and I will tell you that there are a lot of eye conditions that don't have symptoms that you would never know, glaucoma being a big one. Yeah. That, you're not triggered to go see somebody because of some acute situation. And so I would make the argument, I can't stress it enough, that everybody should see an eye doctor at least once a year over the age of 50. And certainly if you haven't had one before the age of 50, don't pass go and go straight to an eye care provider. I think, if you haven't seen an eye doctor, one of your friends or family members has recently. And I think a lot of that word of mouth recommendation is quite powerful. And that's a good way. And then, of course, the internet, but, you got to take everything with somewhat of a grain of salt on the internet and marketing practices and things like that. But I think word of mouth is probably the best place to start. Ask somebody you trust if they have an eye doctor, and then start there.
And before we take a break, 2 very quick comments on what you said. One is, you're right. People do not have an eye doctor, and perhaps just convenience is the answer. So you'll go. That's the key, is getting there. Yeah. If you made the wrong choice, you can always make a switch. And the other is, I blame Medicare. Medicare sends you ticklers saying you didn't take your primary care exam this year. You didn't take your mammogram this year through your doctor. They don't tell you to go take an eye exam. And there's a lot that is covered. So people should not hesitate. Be surprised what's covered. It's not all out of pocket. Some is, but not all. Yeah. So it's important.
That's a great point.
That it's covered. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break, tell you something that I think is important, which is traveling with us. And I'll give you all the details on how to do that so you guys don't go anywhere. We're going to Iceland. Yes, we are, with the incredible leadership of Colette Tours. And this is going to be October 2024. Please come with us. And if you're a real adventurer like me, we are going to add on Greenland for you. Now, I love spas. I've often visited Iceland's top mineral and hot springs, and I'm thrilled to collaborate with Colette on this tour. It's a quest to see the magical northern lights and luxuriate in one of the iconic springs of the world, the Blue Lagoon. Now, there's volcanic beaches, crater viewing glaciers, geothermal pools. For all the details, go to agelesstraveler.com, featured trips, you get discounts, and of course, we will be together. That is so important. And I'll speak with you on perks and further discounts if you're groups of 10 or you come from a nonprofit organization. You want to get some donations through traveling with the Ageless Traveler. Never stop traveling. Now, let's talk about the sun. I have sunglasses that cost me $1, and I have sunglasses that were gifted to me that I think they're about $400. I honestly don't know the difference, except for, one says it's polarized or whatever it is, and it looks nicer. What's the truth here?
Yeah,
what
so,
should we be spending and buying?
Well, I will say right off the bat that the fact that you have sunglasses is a win, because this is something that I do like to talk about when we have these discussions, because I do think it's extremely important for everyone to protect their eyes from the ultraviolet light of the sun. Dermatologists have been amazingly effective at getting the message across that you have to use sunblock, UV, the SPF on your skin. None of us would go to a beach these days without lathering up, every inch of our bodies with, SPF 50 or higher, whatever it is. But at the same time, we're not as good about the sun protection of our eyes. And I always like to say that, think of UV protecting sunglasses as the sunblock for your eyes, and not only the eyeball, but the skin around the eye, because you can't really get the SPF lotions, really, all over your eyelids, right? You just can't get that close to your eyeballs because it'll leak.
Particularly if you have blepharitis, you can't. I'll tell you that much.
Yes,
right.
You would actually make the blepharitis worse. It causes more irritation of the eyes, and so think of a good pair of sunglasses as that protection, especially the wraparound ones that kind of give you the side protection as well. The one, so you mentioned your 2 pairs of sunglasses. If they're probably fairly equivalent, and I always tell patients, you don't have to spend a fortune on sunglasses to get the protection that we all need. The only variable that you have to be certain when you buy the sunglasses is that the sunglass says 100% UV blocking, or UV 400 is the other kind of moniker for sun protection. But it has to have some indication that it is a UV protecting sunglass. The vast majority of them are the ones that cost $1 to the ones that cost $400 or higher. But if it doesn't specifically say it, don't assume that it does. And I would say don't buy sunglasses unless it specifically says UV 400 or 100% UV blocking. That's the important thing. The tint doesn't matter as much. It could be super dark. It can be amber. It can be green. That doesn't matter. It's the UV protection. Polarization for some people with early cataracts and who have glare in their eyes, the polarization can help cut down on glare off water and snow and things like that. That doesn't protect the eyes. It just makes the vision a little more comfortable. It's the UV protection that is the most critical thing. And that, and we know that excessive ultraviolet light can cause tumors of the eyelids and the eyeballs themselves. It can contribute to cataracts, macular degeneration. It can cause growths, benign growths on the surface of the eye, cancerous growths on the surface of the eye. It can burn. You can get a sunburn on your cornea and your ocular surface. And so, sun is bad. And so we need to get the message across like the dermatologists have to protect your eyes with sunglasses when you're outside.
It was once a great book. When we come back, I do want to talk about diabetes. Dr. Starr, when I do a poll of my travelers and I ask them what is their biggest issue about food while they're traveling, they tell me that they're diabetics. So I do want to talk about diabetes and the eye. Don't you guys go anywhere. How painful is it for you to be on an airplane sitting for 8 hours? Well, when I go to Asia, it's sometimes 18 hours. And yes, it can be very uncomfortable. So I ferreted out some wearables for you. T-shirts, socks, even blankets. They're called intelligent threads, and it's something quite unique. Take a look at our products and services page at agelesstraveler.com. I doubt you've seen anything like this. When I was at RadFest, which is a life extension and longevity conference, it was sold out. People were wearing these right there at the conference, trying them on and becoming pain-free. I did the very same. I actually just put a T-shirt on my back, and so did my husband. We didn't even put it over our head, and we were really feeling good after hours of standing on our feet, walking, bending down, and of course we've got computer shoulder and computer back. I would never show this to you and ask you to consider it if I didn't think it would make a difference in how healthy you travel and how much walking you can do while traveling. That's Intelligent Threads right on our website, products and services, agelesstraveler.com. Okay, we are back, and we're back with somebody who's so informative because it's so clear how passionate he is about what he can impart to you, and that's Dr. Christopher Starr. There's really no doubt that he's called upon to be one of those conduits, very difficult to understand information about the eye to the public, because he explains it so beautifully. And we will give you all the resources, including some of the videos that he's made on other shows that really explain a lot about eye health, which is definitely part of successful travel. Now, also part of successful travel is eating right. And when we do trips, we're very, very careful to ask people if they have any issues with food, whether that would be allergies or others. For me, it's low sodium because of high blood pressure. But others are diabetic and they need low sugar. And that does affect the eye. So Dr. Starr, could you just give us a little bit of a heads up? I'm not so sure diabetics take as much care of their eyes as they ought to.
Yeah, these are great discussion topics for sure. And I will, just as an aside, a brief aside, going back to the sort of importance of regular eye exams, especially if you don't have changes in your vision. As ophthalmologists, we often diagnose for the first time things like diabetes, hypertension, in some cases strokes, in some cases multiple sclerosis, in a lot of cases autoimmune diseases like Sjogren's syndrome or rheumatoid, inflammatory bowel, and in some cases brain tumors and things like that. All because, the old sort of adage, the eyes are the window to the soul, but in a lot of ways the eyes are the window to the body as well. It's the only place in the entire body where we can visualize the blood vessels, in the retina, the only place in the body where you can actually examine those in a high magnification, high powered, high detail and resolution way. And it's very unique as far as the body goes. And so we often diagnose diabetes for the first time, patients who don't realize that they have diabetes. And when we look into a retina, we can see in some cases what we call diabetic retinopathy. We see vascular changes to the blood vessels. We see little microaneurysms. We can see some leakages in the back of the eye that sometimes affect vision when they're in the center in the macula, but sometimes they're peripheral and early and don't affect vision and maybe too early for any sort of systemic symptoms of diabetes or hypertension, which does very similar things inside the eye. And so we, can see these early changes and sort of ask the appropriate questions. Oh, how's your blood pressure? Oh, I haven't had it checked in 5 years. Oh, how's your sugar? Oh, I don't know. I haven't been to my primary care doctor. So, we can see these things and sort of tip the patient off and then sort of get these things diagnosed very early. Another thing that diabetes can do, when the sugars are way high, way out of whack, very high sugars, it can also affect the lens inside the eye. So the lens, which is the part of the eye that becomes a cataract, as we get older, we're all going to get cataracts and we're probably all going to need cataract surgery at some point. The average age is around 74 in the United States. But when the sugars are out of whack and super high, that lens can swell up, and that can actually cause significant blurring of the vision that can be attributed to other things, mistakenly attributed to other things like dry eye or change in eyeglasses or what have you, refraction. But these lens changes and the swelling of that lens is often attributable to diabetes. And again, It's the eye doctor that often is the first one to make that diagnosis.
So I do want to remind everybody that these are the kinds of things, and this is a little bit of a soapbox, that you don't take care of because nobody gives you a tickler system. If you've got diabetes, You may have eye problems and you may have foot problems. So once a year, Medicare sends you a notice saying you're entitled to a free pair of diabetic-friendly shoes. So you go to your podiatrist at least once a year because you're getting free shoes. But you don't go to your eye doctor because nobody reminds you. That's what we're here for. And everybody says, older people shouldn't travel because they have frailties. They may have diabetes. They may have eye issues. So don't travel. No. Of course, you've got to get out into the world. Just have to take care of yourself. We come back, give you a little bit of an idea of how you can take care of yourself. All right. Don't you guys go anywhere. I'm inviting you to get a 50% discount. My latest course, Speak Out Communication, a 5-minute recipe to move, touch, and inspire anyone at any time and anywhere. Now, speaking out will make a difference in all areas of your life. It'll help you tell your story if you want to get a job or do fundraising or speak to your healthcare provider or even your family members. If you're shy, you're reluctant to ask for what you want, this is what you're looking for. You will master how to communicate through email, social media, new technologies, and whatever is developed in the future. And you'll also discover how to meet any objection, an intrusion, pushback, emotionally, effectively, in a way that makes a difference to your listener. You will be heard differently. Now, this is a very uniquely designed course, especially made for the boomer. Like me, I know the issues. I know the barriers. I know what happens when you've left perhaps a high position and all of a sudden you feel invisible. Now, this doesn't waste your time. I know you're busy. There's no unnecessary frills. You just learn how to be impactful in a very short period of time. It's clear, it's concise, and it ignites your passion. If you'd like to be an advocate, you can further any good cause by knowing how to speak out and move, touch, and inspire others. It works. It's been used at the United Nations in several places and for many nonprofit organizations and advocates and for individuals like you. How do you access it and get your 50% discount? Well, it makes it under $50 for this 6-week course. You go to speakoutcommunication.com, which you will also find in the show notes, and use the discount code Ageless Traveler. Now we are back, and we're going to we're wrapping up, but, with your, and a real humility, I would say. We didn't mention that you're a surgeon, one of the top. Cataracts is a big deal. I know my mom had it and had it removed and told me that she got a new life. A very good friend of mine who's in his mid-80s thought he was going blind, got his cataracts removed, and you should see him jumping around. So I don't think we want to be afraid of cataract surgery. But how do we know if we need it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one, as we said earlier, we should, over the age of 50, we should all be getting eye exams, and certainly the eye doctor will be able to see cataracts. It's one of the easiest things to diagnose. And as I said, we're all, I always say if you live long enough, you get cataracts, and if you live beyond that, you're going to need cataract surgery. And quite frankly, a lot of patients want cataract surgery. I have so many patients. Oh, is it time? Am I ready? Can I have cataract surgery now, please? And because
like a rite of passage.
Yeah, it's a rite of passage, but it's also
tribal community.
Yeah, it's also when you're younger, your 20s, 30s, 40s, LASIK and laser vision correction is a nice way to get rid of your nearsightedness or farsightedness or astigmatism and free yourself of glasses and contact lenses. But when you're older, think of cataract surgery as the way to do that exact same thing. So people who have been wearing glasses their whole lives have cataracts. Look at this as an opportunity to reduce the need of glasses. And a lot of patients don't need glasses at all, depending on the cataract surgery strategy, whether it's with a premium IOL or lens, a replacement lens that has multifocality, meaning it provides far, intermediate, and near vision simultaneously, or monovision, which is one eye for far, one eye for near. But at a minimum, people might not, who need glasses for reading and for distance after cataract surgery with even the standard lenses, may not need glasses for driving or seeing into the distance, they might just need over-the-counter reading glasses, or vice versa. If they choose a lens that gives them reading vision, they may only need glasses for far. So it's a great opportunity to reduce one's need for glasses. It is, I never like to say it's a simple surgery because no surgery is simple. And there are risks and real potential complications with any surgery. But cataract surgery is overwhelmingly successful. And, the vast, vast, vast majority of patients are thrilled after cataract surgery, especially when those cataracts are substantial, progressed over usually years, and are limiting not only one's vision, but one's ability to function in life, doing daily activities like driving at night and the glare is so bad that you can't drive at night, or playing sports, or just looking at computers. Like the cataracts, and I should say cataract is just simply a clouding of the lens inside the eye. We talked about the lens earlier with diabetes, but with cataracts, it's an age-related, opacification of the lens inside the eye. And you can think of the lens as a lens on your camera. If that gets cloudy and dirty and yellow and irregular, then you can imagine that the quality of the pictures won't be so good on that camera. But similarly, the vision that you have inside your eye is not so good because of this opacification. And so cataract surgery is relatively quick, simple. It's ambulatory surgeries, meaning you go in, go home in the same day. It's not general anesthesia. You're awake. It's local anesthesia in the IV, so that you're kind of like colonoscopy level anesthesia, where you're sedated and twilighted, but not asleep completely. And it's, fairly quick and easy and overwhelmingly successful. So not anything to be afraid of.
That's been my experience. My friends and family have had it. But I will say that my favorite line for a doctor is, a simple procedure is one that somebody else is having. So,
I love it. I love it.
So we have come to the end. I'll add that if you travel, you'll also have beautiful things to look at. That is also important for the eye. Thank you so much, Dr. Starr. This has been very illuminating and really a lovely, lively, health-giving conversation.
Well, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Sadly, we've come to the end of our discussion. I have so much to ask Dr. Starr. Thank you all for listening, and see the show notes. And also go to agelesstraveler.com for resources we mentioned on the show and more. And please visit the Ageless Traveler YouTube channel to meet Dr. Starr in person and discover more about travel eye health. Now, don't forget to join Facebook Salon. You can do that right on agelesstraveler.com. And you can ask medical experts questions to make your travel perfect. And by the way, you'll love our next episode if you forget to look at our podcast and see more about pickleball and trips that you can take with Road Scholar for pickleball. This is Adriane Berg for the Ageless Traveler, here to make sure you never stop traveling.